Good evening and welcome to South Carolina ETV and South Carolina Public Radio's live statewide coverage of primary runoff election night 2026. I'm Gavin Jackson. The polls officially closed 1 hour ago, and at 7:27, the Associated Press has called the Republican gubernatorial race for Alan Wilson, the Attorney General. Numbers continue to come in, and we will bring those to you as we get them over the next hour, but you can see those numbers right now on screen, and we'll have more for you as well. We have reporters at watch parties around the state, and we will have analysis for you as well. More on that in a moment. But like every election night, we only declare winners in races when the Associated Press calls them, like they did for Attorney General Wilson. And we are standing by on those calls. The primary election determines which candidates from each party will appear on the November ballot. The runoffs take place because no candidate in these races reached the 50% plus one vote threshold in the June 9th primary. There are two other statewide races that will determine Republican nominees, and those are for Attorney General and the Commissioner of Agriculture. And we'll see some of those numbers coming in as well. And we'll also be watching the Democrat and Republican runoff in the 1st Congressional District as voters decide who from each party will face off in November to replace outgoing Congresswoman Nancy Mace. We'll have plenty more to say over that over the next hour, but I do want to note our reporters are in the field that we'll be speaking with tonight, including Victoria Hanson at Attorney General Alan Wilson's watch party in downtown Columbia, where I'm sure it's very exciting right now. And Reagan Knight at Lieutenant Governor Pamela Evans' event in Myrtle Beach. We'll be going to them shortly because we also have Winthrop University political science professor Dr. Scott Huffman with us remotely for analysis of these races and the numbers as they come in. Scott, let's go ahead and start with you. It's been 2 weeks since we last talked. We said it was going to be a messy fight for the past 2 weeks. It has been, from the debate to the trail to this dual endorsement from the president and even Senator Ted Cruz stumping for Wilson yesterday. A lot to take in. We'll take it one by one. But how would you summarize this governor's race over the past 2 weeks and that early call by the Associated Press some 30 minutes after polls closed?
Well, I mean, they have a methodology where they are sampling votes outside of specific precincts, so they know what they're doing. We all know that they know what they're doing. This race basically was over the moment Donald Trump gave the dual endorsement. That was releasing the floodgates, letting people do what they clearly had wanted to do in the first place, and that was, unfortunately for Pam Abbott, support her opponent. So Alan Wilson really reaped the benefit of that just overwhelmingly. We saw endorsement after endorsement come in for Alan Wilson. All of the voters, it looks like, who didn't support Pam Abbott in the original primary seems to have lined up behind Alan Wilson. It was dirty. Definitely every cliche of South Carolina politics, bare knuckle knife fight, yada, yada. But the real thing that made the difference in the end, that just opened the floodgates, was that Trump endorsement.
And Scott, we'll go to Victoria shortly. I just want to get some more about this because this is so fascinating to see play out over these past 2 weeks where we saw that sea change, that momentum change, probably leading up before that too, because we did see the Trump endorsement on May 29th. That was a huge bet for the Abbott campaign. They were banking on that. But it really, like we spoke last time, kind of felt like a thud more than a splash because of him alluding to the governor's son possibly being Abbott's running mate. That gave a lot of fuel to the fire. People talking about coronations and dynasties, and really gave a breath of fresh air to a lot of these campaigns that would have saw this otherwise as kind of a death knell. But what do you make of the power of the endorsement from the president these days if he's willing to hedge his bets like this?
Well, he has done very well in federal races. He has not done as well in state races. So again, when when Republicans say, hey, who does Donald Trump want to support him in Washington? They listen to Donald Trump. But it seems like more and more they're saying, look, that's the federal. I support Donald Trump, but we need somebody with their eyes focused back home. And so somebody whose only message, and this is not just in South Carolina, somebody whose only message running for a state office is Donald Trump is my everything, they are not getting the nods that you would expect. So the fact that Pamela Abbott's sails just didn't puff out and just sail her to victory after that endorsement really showed us that there might be a problem, and we've already talked about many of the reasons why.
Yeah, and then also comes down to the candidate itself and the campaign that's been run. Obviously, it's been about a year on the trail for her. I know it's been a year to the day for A.G. Wilson's campaign, he says. But I guess she just didn't really get that momentum that we saw with AG and that name recognition and that, his 16 years essentially as AG. His father, second district congressman Joe Wilson, a bit of a family machine, as well as a political machine behind him with the consultants and folks. And the ground game, of course, that we saw play out for Wilson versus Evett. I mean, I think everyone's going to be doing their deep dives and their autopsies on this. But, I mean, what else can you take away from, maybe aside from the endorsement, how this campaign shook out for Evett versus Wilson?
Well, one of Pamela Evett's attacks was, Alan Wilson's a career politician. There's part of that where she wasn't wrong, and you just pointed it out. Joe Wilson, lending his support, but most importantly, his fundraising network, his support for the political action committees that would line up behind Alan Wilson. Alan Wilson has been plugged into the state for quite a while, plugged into the party network and plugged into the donation network. The lieutenant governor, yes, it's statewide, and not that long ago it was elected on its own. But the fact is, you go around the country and most people can't name their lieutenant governor, and that's not a dig at Pam Eveett. Pam Eveett did a great job at getting her name recognition, but the fact is, Alan Wilson had it there to begin with, and her slight against him, oh, you're a career politician, there was enough truth in that showed he could dig into the party. He had that core party support, and he was plugged into the network in a way she wasn't. And again, because of the endorsement falling flat, that sort of in the end did her in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Scott, good analysis there. And of course, Wilson says when it comes to the career politician thing, that it's more of a state of mind and not necessarily the year, the number behind that. So I guess it's the approach to it versus the years. TBD on that, but we're going to show some results really quick and then jump out to the field because we expect to hear from Lieutenant Governor Evett speaking soon. Ever since the AP called the race for Attorney General Alan Wilson as next Republican gubernatorial nominee, there you can see those numbers with Wilson at 64% and Evett at 36%. We got about 25% of the votes being counted so far, it seems like. And we can look at some of these other statewide races that we're watching tonight as well. Let's see the Attorney General's runoff there with 8th Circuit Solicitor David Stembo at 53% and Georgetown Senator Stephen Goldfinch at 47%. That's another interesting race. Of course, this is the first open statewide race for the Attorney General's seat since 2010, since AG Wilson's been there. And now we're looking at the Commissioner of Agriculture race where Danny Lee Ford Jr. Oh, sorry, we had the numbers off on that one. We'll get back to that in a minute. But that's also a fun toss-up race that we're watching very closely. Of course, these are statewide offices, like I was saying, the Attorney General's race and also the Commissioner of Agriculture race. They haven't been open for some time, 16 years for the AG's race and some 22 years we're talking about for the Commissioner of Agriculture. So you get in there to get that power of the incumbency, and that's what we're looking at right now. But first, we're going to go to Lieutenant Governor Pam Evett's watch party in Myrtle Beach, where South Carolina Public Radio's Reagan Knight is standing by. Hey, Reagan, what's going on there?
Hey, Gavin. Well, that was quick, is what one supporter actually came by and told us just before 7:30. They did take the TV downs with the result right as soon as the AP called the race, and a lot of her supporters in the room that we were seeing didn't even know the race was called once the AP called the race. There were still people trickling in just a few minutes ago, too, but a lot of shock in the room at how early that this race was called. And really, at the end of it, this will be the end of McMaster's term officially, since Lieutenant Governor has lost the race. And it's just shocked. Everybody in this room, I think, is shocked. The feeling's been kind of somber. She is expected to speak momentarily to give her speech. We're waiting to see if she is going to endorse Alan Wilson and even support the Attorney General. But so far, the room has now become somber, and people are still trickling in and getting the word from other supporters and some of her campaign staff. Gavin?
Gotcha. Thank you, Reagan. Yeah, we know that the South Carolina Republican Party will be having a unity barbecue event this Saturday to really unify everyone who's gone through this very bruising primary together to get unified ahead of November. Of course, we already saw Alan Wilson kind of already have his own little unification party because he's gotten so many people endorsing him, including his former opponents like 5th District Congressman Ralph Norman and 1st District Congresswoman Nancy Mace and current State Senator Josh Kimbrell, who dropped out before the election as well. So we didn't see Rom Reddy endorse in this race, but as you can see, with 65% of the vote, looks like he got a lot of people supporting him regardless of who they voted for on the June 9th primary. But we're going to see some of these election results again for the statewide races. And here's the Commissioner of Agriculture race. Again, Cody Simpson now is at 62% with Danny Lee Ford Jr. at 38%. I know he goes by Danny Ford on the ballot. That's his father's name, but he is Danny Lee Ford Jr. I think that's what got him a lot of momentum early there on the June 9th primary. That was a very close race there that sent it to this runoff, but it looks like Cody has a strong lead right now. We'll see much more of those. And we're going to go back to Scott, I believe, before we go to, before we go and see folks down at the Wilson Watch Party, I think. So Scott, kind of going back to you and looking at like the Trump endorsement, I think that's going to be like the storyline through this whole. You look at Iowa, where the governor lost his choice with Finstra by 0.8%. In Georgia, we just saw that play out on June 9th with healthcare executive Rick Jackson defeating the Trump-backed Lieutenant Governor Burt Jones. Of course, Jackson spent $100 million on the race to win by 6 points. No one spent anywhere near that much in this primary. But it's an interesting development because then we saw Texas Senator Ted Cruz show up on the scene. His PAC threw about $250,000 behind Alan Wilson a couple days ago. And then he also showed up like he did for Jackson in Georgia. So, I mean, we're already starting to see the battle lines being drawn for 2028, it seems like. And Cruz say no, like I'm just trying to endorse the most conservative people in these races and really give them that final push at the end there. What do you make of that? And it's 2028 already here now.
Well, Ted Cruz's endorsement, especially near the end, isn't going to change anybody's mind. It will solidify in people's mind, okay, Alan Wilson is a conservative as somebody like Ted Cruz is supporting him, but Ted Cruz is not well liked even among his fellow senators, although he has been elected handily by his state in the past, of course. But the endorsement of Trump for both candidates, that really speaks a lot to Donald Trump and his thinking. Obviously, he doesn't want to lose. He doesn't want people to say, oh, Donald Trump's endorsement doesn't mean as much, isn't as gold as it once was. But that's exactly the message that's coming across. If his initial endorsement didn't rocket the candidate to first place and not need a runoff, and then he endorses both candidates so that he can't lose either way. The fact is that really is peeling some of the gold foil off of his endorsement.
Scott, we got to jump to Alan Wilson really quick. He's giving his acceptance speech really quick.
All right. What a night, ladies and gentlemen. What a night. I can't thank you enough for being here tonight. Man, can we have a time when it's not hot as hell in here? My God. Every speech I give is 400 degrees. Look, I want to start. There's a lot of people to thank, but I have to start. I have to start with my family. I want to start with my wife, Jennifer. If it wasn't for her, I wouldn't have been able to do what I needed to do to get this done. Jennifer, thank you. I have told so many stories about her courage that she went through several years ago, and that courage inspires me to this day, honey. Thank you so much for being here. And folks, the best title, the best job anyone could ever have is that of dad. And I want to thank my son, Michael, and my daughter, Anna Grace. By the way, did y'all like the commercial? I gave you one job. I want to thank my mom and dad and my brothers. I've got nieces and nephews, cousins. I've got so many people from my family, uncles. Family is what it's all about. Mike Rickenbaugh talked about it. The building block of society. It's the building block of our state. And I'm going to fight for your family as hard as I fight for my own family. And I want to thank my family for being here. Thank you so much. I love you. Real quick, they surprised me. I didn't know they were coming in, but I got another family. They work as Attorney General for the last 16 years, and I got to make some of the best friends of my life. And I want to thank the Attorney General of Arkansas, Tim Griffin, who was here. I don't know where Tim is standing, but he's over here waving at me. Attorney General Liz Murrill from Louisiana. And my dear friend, Governor Jeff Landry from the great state of Louisiana. Aren't you like an emissary to like Greenland or something? Anyway, South Carolina. But folks, if I start doing the name thing, we'll be here all night. But I also want to talk about the Rickenbaws. You guys have heard me talk about what I went through to find a running mate. And I wanted somebody that was going to be a powerful, inspirational leader that would bring people together from our state, somebody that the kids could look up to, that would move South Carolina into the future. And I found that person, and I decided to make her husband my running mate. In all seriousness, Mike, you've really become like my family. And when we started talking in I guess it was August, we had our first conversation, and the decision was made in early December, ladies and gentlemen. I remember talking to Mike, and when I asked him what was the most important issue facing South Carolina, it was his answer that really sealed the deal for me. It made me want to make him my running mate, to make him my partner in this journey. And he said, families. It's all about families. And I never forgot about that, and I will never forget that, Mike. So thank you so much. I want to thank the hundreds, if not thousands, of volunteers, the volunteers who were out there in the heat, the sun, the rain. You were getting up when it was dark. You were going to bed when it was dark. Without you, I mean, this campaign wouldn't have gone as far as it did. I want to thank not just the volunteers, but the supporters, everyone out there, whether you just simply went and voted for me, or whether you were making calls, signing envelopes, whatever you did, you were as much a part of this victory as anybody, and I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. I will never forget it. I will never forget it. I want to thank campaign staff, folks, the campaign staff. I mean, let me tell you something. We started off a small group, but we began to grow, and now we have, I think, over 20 people on our staff canvassing the state, and it's the staff that really, made this campaign go. And you know who you are, and if I start doing the names, we'll be here all night. But I want to thank my staff because you sustain me, guys. We have donors, people who, whether you wrote a small check or a big check or a bunch of big checks, car can't go anywhere if there's not gas in the tank, and you kept us going when we needed. We were outspent, but it was you who doubled down on me, who believed in me, believed in this campaign, believed in this movement, who spent so much. Thank you. I will not forget it, and it was not in vain. Thank you. I'm looking out on the crowd right now, and I'm seeing a lot of elected officials. I'm looking at you right now. I'm seeing sheriffs. I'm seeing senators, House members. People who on school boards, town councils, city councils, county councils, dog catcher. You put your name on me because you trusted me and you fought for me. Thank you. I won't forget it. Thank you for coming on board. Thank you. I want to thank God. I know that seems cliche to thank God. I told you guys 2 weeks ago, and I'm going to tell you again tonight. This morning when I woke up, I prayed, and I didn't pray for a win. I prayed to be in God's will. And if God's will was for me to lose, I was praying that He would give me the grace to accept it. And if His will was for me to win, I would pray for the courage and the wisdom to do what needs to be done to lead this state into the future. And so I want to thank God. Folks, I want to also, a number of people ran for this race. There was a lot of competition over the last year, and I want to give a shout out because they didn't have to. But I want to thank Josh Kimbrell, who endorsed me before the primary even. Josh is a firebrand in the Senate. He's going to continue to help fight to move South Carolina forward, and I look forward to working with him. I want to thank Nancy Mace. And I want to say, things didn't start out too cool with Nancy and me. I don't know where Nancy's not here right now. She couldn't be, or she's out of town, but I want to thank her. But once we got a chance to sit down and once we got a chance to talk, able to come together. And on election night 2 weeks ago, she decisively and early, the first one to endorse me after the polls closed. I mean, right after they called the race, she was the first call I got, and she jumped on board. And I want to give her a shout out to say thank you, Nancy, for your support. I want to thank Ralph Norman, you know, Congressman Ralph Norman, who was a very honorable man. He is a man with strong beliefs. He was a conservative juggernaut who believed in a movement, and I believe in that movement too. He took a little longer, but we had several conversations. No, that's a good thing. He wanted to make sure he got it right. And I remember sitting down and we had a conversation. I want to thank Congressman Norman. I want to thank his family for their service to the state of South Carolina. I want to thank Ron Reddy, who was an outside businessman with a real message of reform, and he brought a lot to the table, and a lot, if not all of what he talked about, I support and agree with, and I appreciate him being part of this race and being part of this movement as well. Folks, they each brought something unique to this election cycle, and all of these candidates, while we were competing against each other, they made me a better candidate. They taught me resilience. They helped me find the courage I needed to find. They lifted me up by pushing against me. And I pushed against them because that's what you do in a competition. But I want to thank them. I want to thank the supporters. I invited all the supporters of Mr. Kimbrell, Ms. Mays, Mr. Norman, and Mr. Reddy to come to Wilson, Team Wilson. This is your home if you want it. Not only did they come here, man, I mean, they literally kicked open the door. And they started sleeping here full time, right? It was like a frat house. All over the state, people from these camps, they said, Alan, we're going to give you a chance, and we're going to choose to believe in you. And I want to thank the supporters from all of those camps who gave me the chance for the last 2 weeks. I also want to thank Pamela Yvette. And like I said with the other, I would encourage you to applaud her. I said this 2 weeks ago about the other folks who didn't make the runoff, and I'm going to say it again about Miss Yvette. She is not my enemy. Her supporters are not our enemy. They're our kinsmen. They're our fellow citizens. And Pamela, for 8 years, faithfully served Governor McMaster in the state of South Carolina, and she did a good job as lieutenant governor. And while we had different approaches and different views, and while we competed, and it was sometimes very tough, I want to thank her for throwing her name into the ring, being the woman in the arena. It's tough. And it's difficult for what she and her family are going through tonight, but I want to thank her for that too. And I look forward to sitting down with her in the future. She did call me a little while ago and congratulated me, and she's to be commended for that. So please love her. To all of the Yvette supporters out there, hard for her, and you're to be commended. I would ask that you give me the opportunity to fight for you as we go into the general election. Give me that opportunity, and I will fight as hard for you as you fought for her. You too have a home here with Team Wilson. Just make yourselves at home. Everyone else did. Beer's in the fridge. Folks, together, over the coming days and the coming weeks, we're going to unify. We need to unify. We can't focus on what divides us. We have to focus on what unites us. That's what's important in South Carolina. I also want to give a shout out to President Trump. I was honored to receive his endorsement. He co-endorsed me late last. I believe he recognized what we've been doing for the last 10 years to support the things he was trying to accomplish with his administration. But also, I think he saw the fight that in our campaign, the energy in our campaign. And I think he likes a fighter, and I think that's what won him over. I want to thank you, Mr. President. I was honored to receive your support, and I look forward to working with you as we move forward. I want to thank Scott. Ladies and gentlemen, I aspire not to be a transitional governor, but to be a transformational governor. People are skeptical. South Carolina are skeptical about their government. They've become cynical. They're tired of the status quo. They're tired of elected officials just saying whatever they can say to get elected. But folks, I'm telling you, that is over. Here's what we're going to do. Three things. I'm going to do a bunch of things, but three things I want to highlight for you. We're going to launch the Families First Audit Initiative. That's our version of DOGE. That's a complete top-bottom audit of all state government agencies. We're going to allow for public comment. We're going to let you take your government back, and then we're going to lay out a roadmap for real reform to make government more efficient, more accountable, more receptive, and all around. And that's going to start the Families First Audit Initiative that Mike Rickenbaugh is going to lead. We're going to prioritize infrastructure. We're going to fix our roads and our bridges and expand our energy grid. We're going to modernize the Department of Transportation. The air.
Yeah, we were getting a bad signal there from the Attorney General. Unfortunately, got to get that internet signal in order to get that out to us from downtown Columbia, where he was giving his victory speech after the Associated Press named him the Republican gubernatorial nominee at 7:27 p.m. We also are going to look at some new numbers before we go to Lieutenant Governor Pamela Evitts' watch party, where she gave her concession speech. So let's look at those numbers right now. Of course, the latest for the Republican gubernatorial primary runoff with Alan Wilson at 66% and Lieutenant Governor Evitts at 34%. And we're going to go to the Attorney General's race, where 8th Circuit Solicitor David Stumbo is at 53%, and Georgetown Senator Stephen Goldfinch is at 47%. Pretty close right there in this runoff for the Attorney General's Republican nomination there. And we do know that the Associated Press has called the Commissioner of Agriculture race for Cody Simpson, who stands at 63%, to Danny Lee Ford at 37%. Also want to note that Simpson did enjoy the endorsement of President Donald Trump, so a big win there, along with Alan Wilson, who received that dual endorsement from President Trump. So we're seeing some of the Trump endorsements pay off here in South Carolina. Of course, that was a runoff between the two of them, and then now we see that Simpson's having a breakaway moment in this runoff. So still waiting to see what's going to happen there in the Attorney General's race between 8th Circuit Solicitor David Stumbo and Georgetown Senator Stephen Goldfinch, neck and neck there. But we're going to go to Lieutenant Governor Pam Evitts' watch party, where she started giving her speech during Alan Wilson's acceptance speech. So let's go ahead and roll that tape and see what she had to say to her supporters in Myrtle Beach.
Well, y'all know me. I usually just speak from the heart, but today I think I'm going to stick to a script, so I touch all the things that I feel like I need to. But first and foremost, I want to say thank you. Good evening. Thank you for coming. Thank you for traveling. It's just, this has been an amazing journey for me and for my family. And unfortunately, despite our best efforts, we have all left it on the field. We have worked as hard as we all could, and we came up short. But we all love this state, and that hasn't changed. And I won't pretend that I'm not disappointed, because I am. I want to reiterate what I've said all along. This race wasn't about me. It never has been. It's been about you. The people, the taxpayers, the business owners, the families who make our state the best in the world. This wasn't just a campaign for me, it was a movement. A movement built around keeping South Carolina the best place to live, to work, and to raise your family. And so just a few minutes ago, I called Alan Wilson to congratulate him on his win tonight and to tell him that he has my support as the party's nominee. I'm committed, and I hope you all join me in doing everything we can to ensure a win in November. As I see so many familiar faces in the crowd tonight, it's hard for me to feel anything other than an intense gratitude for all of the incredible people who've stood with me every step of the way. And I do mean every step of the way. From the calls to the texts to it's so tiring and I'm at my 11th event of the day and you call and you send smiling faces and my kids and my husband say, Mom, you can do this, honey, you've got this. You really have been the fuel that has kept me going. You all betted on me, and I don't take that lightly. And to my family, to David, my mom, Jenny, who's sitting down there, my brothers, but mostly my incredible kids. Amanda, Joseph, Jackson, and Simon, none of this means anything to me without all of you. You have been my rock through every single day. I could have never made it this far without your support. And I love you more than I could ever say. It's okay to be disappointed. Lord knows that I am. But in just a few months, there's going to be a general election. And the choice in that general election is going to be between conservative principles and a Democratic Party that wants the exact opposite for South Carolina. And that's not even a close call. So tonight, the primary is over. Tonight, we come together because the stakes are too high and South Carolina is worth too much for us to do anything else. This isn't the end of anything for me. It is just the beginning of a different chapter. I'm still going to fight for the people of South Carolina every day. And I am still, and I will always be grateful beyond measure for having the honor to serve this state, the state I love, for the last 8 years. God bless you all. God bless this amazing country we get to call ours. And God bless the great state of South Carolina. Y'all, thank you so much.
And that was Lieutenant Governor Pamela Evette there in Myrtle Beach giving her concession speech after losing to Attorney General Alan Wilson for the Republican gubernatorial nomination. We'll look at these numbers again because it is 8:30. Polls have been closed for 90 minutes. And again, the Associated Press called the race for Alan Wilson just before 7:30. And you can see there that he got 67% of the vote to Evette's 34% right now. As the numbers continue to come in, we're still neck and neck with the Attorney General Republican runoff with 8th Circuit Solicitor David Stumbo at 53% and Georgetown Senator Stephen Goldfinch at 47%. We know that the Commissioner of Agriculture race has been called by the Associated Press for Cody Simpson, who's at 63%. That was a Trump endorsement right there that paid off as well, along with Wilson over Evette. And now we look at the 1st Congressional District for the Democrats. Nancy LaCour is leading Mac DeFord at 53% to 47%. And we look at the Republicans in that race, and we see that Charleston County Councilwoman Jenny Costa Honeycutt is at 52%, and State Representative Mark Smith is at 48%. So a lot going on down there. It's still hard to see who's going to win those nominations for the 1st Congressional District race. Scott, we're going to jump to you. We can talk about the 1st Congressional District race briefly in a moment, but you know, we just saw 2 different messages playing out there from the 2 candidates. With Wilson with that congratulatory speech, again, continuing that message of unity, kind of that joyful warrior message we've seen play out on the trail from him. Like, we haven't really heard him go too negative. Obviously, the debates are a different story, but when he's on the stump and when he's talking about his former opponents, he calls them competitors. He doesn't call them enemies. He's really trying to get a unifying message. I wouldn't say it's a moderate tone, but it's different. I mean, again, it's compared to what I heard from Ted Cruz, that more national message where he's attacking the Democrats. Obviously, we'll probably start hearing more of that going into November. But what do you make of his tone and how he's presented himself on the campaign trail throughout the past year?
He's been more broadly strategic. Again, it's sort of making sure that he's not alienating key allies. He did this along the entire way, knowing, especially after Trump endorsed Evette, that he would have to pick up voters from the other candidates. And if he had spent his time bashing each one of them by name and alienating their voters, he might not have been able to do that. Now, you know, no one knew that Trump was going to co-endorse him. So for all he knew, he had to be strategic. He couldn't go out on the attack against every other candidate. He did have some of his political action committees do that for him. Well, he didn't, no coordination, certainly. But several political action committees tied to him went on the pretty vicious offensive against some of the other candidates, including Ralph Norman. But Alan Wilson on the campaign trail made sure not to alienate any of their voters because he thought he might have to pull them in despite not having Trump's endorsement. And then he gets it at the end, and it just becomes an overwhelming victory.
And he's calling that this is going to be not a transitional administration, but a transformational government. He's talking about doing an auditing with that Families First audit initiative, really kind of giving his Lieutenant Governor, Mike Rickenbach, Florence Senator Mike Rickenbach, already a portfolio that we really never saw develop for Lieutenant Governor Evett. Like, you know, under the McMaster administration was focused on building that McMaster legacy, which he really did cement, but there wasn't much for her to run on besides just what he did. Obviously, they worked together closely, and she had some things, but we're already seeing Wilson set up Mike Rickenbach, his running mate, for some success, for some sort of buy-in versus just being like, okay, you're there to help us win certain aspects of the race, demographics, areas. What do you make of that running mate decision by Wilson back in January to get Rickenbach on the ticket, and then also Lieutenant Governor Evett, who rolled out a list of about 9 names, not all of them vetted, about a week ago, trying to create some hype?
Well, you know, the Evett issue, I think, is the big one. Again, you say not vetted. It was a long list. I think it was an attempt to say, look, there was no backroom deal. I'm considering tons and tons of people. Really, honestly, it really kind of made it look like there was some chatting in the back rooms, and she's having to now come out with a list of potential candidates. It doesn't matter whether that's actually true or not. That's the perception that came across. Now, since the lieutenant governor has been elected along with the governor, you know, the role has kind of changed, but the governor has always sort of been allowing or not allowing the lieutenant governor to do things. If you remember Andre Bauer took on a portfolio where he focused on issues related to senior citizens, and that seemed to be setting him up to go into his own election for governor potentially because he was so young. This gave him an in with senior citizens. So making sure that you look like you are getting the whole team involved really matters. And let's be honest, we are not the weakest governor state, but we are kind of a weak governor state. We are a legislative dominant state. So everything a gubernatorial candidate says they're going to do, they're only going to be able to do it as long as the legislature is willing to help them and go along with them.
And that was a big message that Evett wanted to convey, was her working relationship with the legislature, something that McMaster really cultivated, unlike his predecessors, who always had that kind of, I don't know the word. You could probably use the word for me. That little rough and tumble relationship with Nikki Haley in the legislature, with Mark Sanford in the legislature. No one's brought any livestock into the State House that I can think of since the Sanford administration. So, I mean, it's different because he did get that legacy. He did get things accomplished because at the end of the day, the average person who's not watching gavel to gavel coverage, isn't as plugged in, but sees some accomplishments happen coming out of the State House, really doesn't know, you know, did the governor do that? Did the State House do that? There's always this fight over who has the ownership, but you consult on the campaign trail basically however you want to.
Yeah, and you know, the truth is people tend to give the executive credit or give the executive blame. You know, that's true in the economy. I mean, you can point to and say, oh, these things happened because Trump did this or that. But the truth is, for all presidents past, whether the economy fared well or not, the president got the blame or the credit. To the degree that you're looking at the state economy, that's somewhat true. In the state economy, we are still seeing some of that K-shaped economy where the economy, the industry is doing quite well, but people are still struggling with prices. So there are two kind of groups of people, one doing very well, one not so much. But usually, whether the legislature really did something or not, people don't think of the government that way. They tend to think of the government by the most visible face, and that's the governor.
Mm-hmm. And of course, when it comes to the primaries and the runoffs, we're talking a lot about the most active members of the party too, so they are very plugged in. We want to jump now to Victoria Hanson, who's at the watch party for the Attorney General in downtown right now, and see what it's been like after, of course, he was declared the winner at 727, and then, of course, also when we just saw his acceptance speech as well. So we're going to jump to Victoria really quickly when we get that shot up here. I think she's standing by for us. I don't know if she can hear us. That shot might not be up yet. Scott, let's just jump back to you while we get that established there. We're also I'm still wondering about, you know, when we looked, I don't know how much of that debate you watched at Coastal Carolina last week, but it was very interesting, the dynamics. I was there. It was different from the previous debates that we've seen during this campaign. The GOP had 3 debates. Evatt only attended one of them. Wilson was at all of them. ETV had a debate. Not everyone participated. But unlike, the SCGOP debates, we didn't have an audience. They had audiences, and that runoff debate was very rowdy to the point where people were heckling folks. It wasn't just loud applause and hooting and hollering in between answers. It was shouting at the people on the stage, something I've never really seen before in South Carolina politics, really summarizing that whole blood sport we're talking about. Did that really help sharpen things? Do you think that really helped solidify anyone's views when it comes to who's a fighter, who can take a punch? I mean, what were your takeaways from that bruising debate?
Most people found out about the debate by, watching your coverage, by reading about it. The simple fact is the majority of people did not tune in and watch it. However, the coverage really did focus on the spectacle of it, how brutal it was. I actually have seen a debate where there was hooting and hollering, and I honestly think it made a difference. When the presidential candidates came through and Newt Gingrich got South Carolina, there was a group of Gingrich supporters who were going crazy, and they happened to be right next to the microphones. They weren't overly loud, they weren't overly huge, but they were right next to the microphones, and people who watched that debate on television thought that the crowd was constantly going nuts for Newt Gingrich. So the crowd can have an effect, but the truth is not as many people were watching this as the candidates probably think, but it was really important for them, again, to be tough and to have the crowd for them against their opponent because of how the media would cover it afterwards and how it would spread on the Republican county Facebook pages around the entire state.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. As a debate moderator, my heart breaks to know that people aren't watching debates, Scott. But of course they are important, but they are education. It's okay. It's understandable. We'll shake it off. But we're going to go Victoria Hanson right now at the Attorney General's watch party in downtown Columbia. Hey, Victoria.
Hi, Gavin. A lot of excitement here at the Marriott in downtown Columbia. Yes, this was a victory party for Alan Wilson. I saw the signs as I walked in looking for watch party here at the Marriott. No, the sign said victory party, and that's what it turned out to be tonight. The Associated Press calling this race very early on. And of course, Wilson taking to the stage just moments ago. The room finally beginning to clear out. Several hundred people had gathered here from all across the state. I saw Charleston County Sheriff Carl Ritchie. I saw members of Charleston County Council, all kinds of people, even members of the prosecution in the Murdaugh trial. Of course, it went on 3 years ago for 6 weeks long. But the Wilson took to the stage. He talked about streamlining government. He talked about fixing roads and infrastructure. But most importantly, he talked about making South Carolina affordable for all families. And that brought up a serious applause from people in this crowd. Again, a big party going on here tonight. It is official. Alan Wilson is the Republican nominee. He runs for governor this fall.
And I hate that we're having those connectivity issues out of the Marriott downtown in Columbia, Alan Wilson's watch party, but that was Victoria Hanson with us. Thanks, Vic. Hopefully we'll get back to you soon. Now we're going to go to Myrtle Beach, where Reagan Knight is at Lieutenant Governor Pamela Evatt's watch party. And of course, we know that she already gave her concession speech there, a bit different vibe out in Myrtle Beach than downtown Columbia. Hey, Reagan.
Hey, Gavin. Well, that was short and that was quick, is what some of the reporters were saying to us before Pamela Evatt came on to speak to us. And the lieutenant governor did speak. She was not joined by the governor. It was just her and her family on stage. The lieutenant governor was choked up, but the first thing she said was that she was going to stick to her script and that she did call Alan Wilson to congratulate him and that she was committed to supporting him throughout the rest of the way. Throughout her speech, she also talked about how this election is a battle against conservative principles and the Democratic Party that is against them. It was a very short speech. The mood has been kind of somber and everybody has already trickled out. But after she left the stage, she did mingle around a little bit, hugging just about everybody that came up to see her. So it's going to be interesting to see what's going to happen next for the lieutenant governor. She did say to her supporters that she was grateful to have served as lieutenant governor for the past 8 years. Gavin?
Gotcha. Yeah, that's Reagan Knight there out in Myrtle Beach at Lieutenant Governor Pam Evatt's watch party. And we're going to look at some numbers here as it's 8:45 and polls have been closed for about an hour and 45 minutes right now. So let's go and bring those up and see what the results are looking like for some of these races that we're still waiting on. Of course, that's the Republican primary, the gubernatorial primary runoff for the governor, which we know was determined to be Alan Wilson. He's at 68% to Lieutenant Governor Pamela Evatt at 33%. And we're also in the Attorney General's runoff right here, and that's between David Stumbo and Stephen Goldfinch. I want to just go ahead and note that this is a wide open race for the first time since 2010 when Alan Wilson got in there, and the focus has been tough on crime and prosecutorial experience. There's been a lot of negative third-party advertising and mailers during this race as well, but it looks like 8th Circuit Solicitor David Stumbo's pulling it out there with 55%. And of course, he's leaning pretty heavily into his conservative credentials and anti-abortion stances, as well as focusing heavily on his criminal prosecution work and being tough on crime. Stumbo was first elected in 2012 as the 8th Circuit Solicitor, which covers Abbeville, Greenwood, Lawrence, and Newberry counties. And he's worked for other solicitors, and he's been in and out of the AG's office as well. And he's a USC Law School grad and lives in Greenwood. And whereas Goldfinch, he's a Georgetown center who grew up in Conway and graduated from the Citadel and went from the business world to getting his law degree from the College of Charleston and won a state house seat in 2012 and then jumped to the state senate in 2016 where he's been ever since. And Goldfinch is a JAG officer in the Army National Guard, and he's a married father of 2. And also something that might be working against him here too is that he helped prosecute the case against State Treasurer Curtis Loftus in the vote to remove him in the Senate over the $1.8 billion double counting boondoggle in the Treasurer's office. The State Inspector General has referred that case to investigative agencies, but at this time said that there's no wrongdoing that it found. But again, Loftus has been hitting Goldfinch over that. And even though that vote was 33-8 last April in the state Senate, and the House never took it up. So a lot of firepower going against Goldfinch there, probably because of that vote. And also talking about trying to investigate him if he were to become Attorney General, as that has been referred to these investigative agencies in the state. So a little bit of what's going on with the Attorney General's race, which is the last statewide Republican runoff that we're waiting to see called. But it's 55% to Stumbo, 46% there to Goldfinch. And now we're talking about the Ag Commissioner race. We know that Cody Simpson has been declared the winner. He's right there at 63%. Now, both candidates in this runoff support preserving farmland, clamping down on development in solar farms, as well as preventing Chinese entities from obtaining farmland and bringing back the timber industry in the state. A lot of big promises on that campaign trail that are going to need legislative work. And this is something that we'll probably see Cody Simpson taking head on, because Simpson's been very close not only with the governor's office, where he worked from 2018 through 2025 and also served as the state executive director at the USDA Farm Service Agency, but has those connections even to the point where he got the endorsement from President Donald Trump, where he even urged him to run on social media. And Trump also cut a recent video message for Simpson recently, something he didn't do for Evett. In fact, he endorsed Evett's opponent. He did not do that here for Danny Ford. And of course, Simpson raised about $509,000 and was up on TV compared to Danny Lee Ford Jr., who's the son of the well-known Clemson football coach Danny Ford, who got that 1981 championship up there in Clemson. So a lot going on, a lot to recap there for those races. But again, Cody Simpson is the Republican nominee for the Commissioner of Agriculture, and a lot to take in. Scott, let's keep going back to the governor's race, because why not? We got those races kind of tied up. Unless you want to go deep on the Commissioner of Ag race. But I mean, I think we can actually tie that in. Like, let's talk about that.
There was some interesting stuff on the ag race, but go ahead.
No, go ahead and tell me what you, I mean, let's talk about that Trump endorsement. Last time we were on 2 weeks ago, we were saying Trump really needs to do something big for Evett. Then he kind of saw the writing on the wall. There was that Washington Post story saying that there could be a dual endorsement coming out. He never did anything besides a social media post and a teletown hall, whereas Cody gets a video just, the day of the runoff. I mean, the writing was on the wall, like we're saying here.
Well, and that was a full-throated endorsement. There was no hedging on that. But I can also probably assure you that he knew quite well that Simpson was pulling ahead. There were several PACs that were constantly putting out messages. Some of them just simply focused on Danny Lee Ford Jr., his name. Saying he's trying to trade on his father's name, going by Danny Ford. He's really Danny Lee Ford. One political action committee, their whole ad was that, but it ended with say no to hemp growing, never Trump, Danny Lee Ford. There was some fascinating stuff out there. But between those, the vicious PAC ads and then, the Trump endorsement, that was really kind of the nail in the coffin.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then again, this is a position that hasn't been open for more than 2 decades with Hugh Weathers, and Hugh Weathers did throw his support originally behind Fred West. Fred West kind of fizzled out there, especially after Simpson got that Trump endorsement. They both went and endorsed Ford, and now we know that Cody Simpson is the Republican nominee for that. So again, going to require a lot of work. with the legislature to accomplish a lot of those things that they talked about on the campaign trail. A lot of big promises made out there for the ag commissioner. But again, Simpson's been around this. He was the governor's chief executive assistant from 2018 through 2025, an agriculture advisor, fifth generation farmer from Manning. He knows agriculture and knows some of the players. And of course, he's only 34 years old. So probably one of the younger folks who've been, who's going on to possibly be elected statewide. And of course, Scott, let's just talk about the facts here as we look at the general election going forward in November. We're going to see Alan Wilson facing off against State Representative Jermaine Johnson, who won the Democratic nomination outright on June 9th in that three-way primary. The two are very cordial. It's going to be very interesting to see them kind of go after each other because I've been around them together at forums, and they, they get along. Like Alan says, like, these people are my enemies. They're my competitors. So I think that's an interesting task that he's bringing to this conversation. Hopefully we'll have a general election debate with everyone on the stage. But set us up for November and start looking towards that and what some expectations people might need to temper when it comes to Democrats winning statewide in South Carolina.
Well, I think we're going to have pretty good Democratic turnout. Annie Andrews has a whole lot of Democrats really excited. They should probably temper that excitement a little bit. We know that the Republicans just go into the general election with an advantage. It's simply not true to say otherwise. It doesn't matter whose feelings get hurt. The simple fact is the Republican has a leg up. That doesn't mean it's impossible for a Democrat. It just means they have a lot further to climb. But you mentioned one of the more interesting races we're going to see, and that's the treasurer race. I think we'll be talking about that race a lot more as we go forward, as it sort of appears some of the other statewide races are, nailed down and we know who's going to win. The race between Loftus and Co., that is going to be one folks are going to start talking about. That's going to be a really interesting race to watch in November. To the degree it gets closer and closer, the races might get a little more vicious. We know that the Senate race, they're going to be throwing the trash cans at each other. Lindsey Graham, no matter whether he has the leg up and in a primary or a general, he has enough money to run whatever ad he wants, and he will, and there'll be vicious ads. And Annie Andrews has made a strong point about how Lindsey Graham has sort of facilitated Robert Kennedy Jr. and the MAHA movement and the anti-vaxxing and all that. So she's going to be going after him full throttle as well. That'll be an interesting race, but again, she has an uphill climb. But that's going to be one of the more vicious races, irrespective of how close it is. Mm-hmm.
And that's going to be reminiscent of the 2020 race, too, with Jamie Harrison and Lindsey Graham. Of course, Harrison raising some $130 million there in that race, presidential. But of course, still lost by 10 points to Graham, who also raised $100 million. But of course, that's money that you raise in a Georgia gubernatorial primary runoff, it sounds like. I mean, my gosh, when you think about that amount of money floating around. But, you're talking about that national appeal, too, when it comes to the Senate race and that face-off. So it's going to be interesting to see. People are going to be watching the margins, I guess, on these races. There's also been a lot of influx of folks to the state, but of course, it's a lot of Republicans moving into the state too. It's not necessarily this big influx of Democrats from up north, and the Republican Party knows that. So I guess we're just going to be watching how close they can get. It's going to matter. Do you think it's going to matter what's going on in Washington too, and how that can be used against some of these folks, whether that's in the state races or more of the congressional races?
Again, you have to have several things, coming together at the same time, at the perfect moment. A Democrat really needs the perfect storm. Again, it's not statistically impossible, but it is highly improbable. But, the distance between Andrews and Graham might not be as large as people expect because of some of those national issues that are coming in. And, we've seen that over and over. We're going to see that in national elections around the country. The Democrats are going to do well in House elections. That's one of the main reasons that we saw the redistricting around the country. So we're in line to see national issues coming in. And one of the interesting things is always The nationalization of politics means that there are a lot of politicians out there who talk about things that they don't have the power to do. When you have a state representative talking about U.S. tariffs or the war in Iran, that just goes to tell you about the nationalization of politics. Tip O'Neill said all politics is local, and it was then. That is the opposite of what's true today.
Mm-hmm. And Scott, we know the Associated Press just called the Attorney General's race for 8th Circuit Solicitor David Stumbo over Georgetown Senator Stephen Goldfinch. So that's a fascinating development there, too, because we know Stumbo has been the solicitor up in the 8th Circuit since 2012 when he was first elected. And that, again, covers Abbeville, Greenwood, Lawrence, and Newberry counties. Very nice conservative pocket there that I'm sure he leveraged for this race. And, of course, we saw David Pasco, the first circuit solicitor in this race. Originally, he didn't make it to the runoff with these guys. It was interesting because we had a debate here with all three of them, and you saw a lot of Pasco and Wilson going back and forth, but Stumbo just kind of stayed above the fray there. And I think, Pasco was telling Wilson that he should have been attacking Stumbo a little bit more. I mean, do you think that was a miscalculation not to hit Stumbo harder, or was that more of these packs going after each other on the sidelines instead?
I don't think it was necessarily a strategically bad idea. It was a strategy choice. It could have played out very differently. But as you noted, Stumbo had a lot of things lining up behind him, a lot of the conservative bona fides. Goldfinch
with the congressional
had
district.
The Palmetto Gun Rights Group, the state NRA, running ad after ad against him. So Stumbo really had a lot of advantages going in. Pasco's strategy didn't pan out, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it was the wrong strategy at the time.
And Scott, really quick, we have 2 minutes left, but I want to ask you really quickly, 30 seconds, your biggest takeaways from this primary cycle that we've seen so far.
I don't think there's any doubt about the biggest takeaway being the Trump endorsement and the impact that it had. And we found a candidate and a campaign that was able to blunt a Trump endorsement for a Republican candidate, and how that played out and the implications for Trump endorsements around the country.
Gotcha.
Biggest takeaway for me, the impact or lack thereof of the Trump endorsement.
That's Winthrop University political science professor Dr. Scott Huffman. And really quick, before we jump out, we're going to look at these final numbers before we send you on your way tonight, with Alan Wilson, of course, being declared the Republican gubernatorial primary winner at 67%. And then we continue on with the Attorney General's race, with the Associated Press calling 8th Circuit Solicitor David Stumbo as the Republican nominee, defeating Georgetown Senator Stephen Goldfinch, who will stay in the Senate. And the Commissioner of Agriculture race was called for Cody Simpson, who defeated Danny Ford, 63 to 37% there, too, in the runoff. And we're still undecided on the U.S. House District 1 races with the Democrats, with Nancy LaCour at 53% and Mac DeFord at 47%, very close there. And on the Republican side, we have Charleston County Councilwoman Jenny Costa Honeycutt at 53% and State Rep Mark Smith at 47%. And we're out of time, folks. Hate that we have to leave so soon, but you can rewatch this coverage and more at youtube.com/SCETV News. We'll have a full recap of the governor's runoff race this Friday night at 7:30 on This Week in South Carolina, right here on SCETV. And of course, after our 3 debates and our 2 election night shows, this concludes our primary election 2026 coverage, but our general election coverage will ramp up after Labor Day, and you'll be able to find that all at scetv.org/elections. From all of us here at South Carolina TV and South Carolina Public Radio, thanks for tuning in, and good night.